What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the new Hatchee office. Today we're going to talk about how we filmed and produced a six-figure documentary. So this project came to me actually by Realtree, a client that I've already had for a long time. So they have an artist that's part of their pro staff. His name's Drake White. Y'all may know him, you may not. So Drake White's story is a crazy one. He's a country music artist. He hit in 2019, he had a stroke on stage. And through 2019 to now, he's been working his way to get back to where he was. In order to properly execute a project like this, you have to know the story inside and out. You need to be the person that knows the story second best behind the person who actually wrote the story. I don't think it's effective if you just have the main subject, who was Drake, the main talent in this, to tell the entire story, because it feels a little disingenuous. If Drake's just telling a story, it doesn't give Drake, who is the main character in this, any authority. That's why I wanted to have his parents talk about his childhood, so they could talk about his character whenever he's growing up and why he is the way he is now. I wanted to have his wife tell a story about the stroke, because she's going to have a completely different perspective on what Drake thought happened. I wanted to have his creative director, Zach, talk through how it was working with him before the stroke. I wanted to have people in the industry that are monsters in the industry, like Riley Green, Kid Rock. I wanted to have Zach Brown. Like, these are heavy hitters in the industry. If they're talking about Drake, then that's giving some credence to who Drake is and how he was before the stroke. And it adds a whole different element to the film that we would have had if it was just Drake and maybe a few other people talking. So this is the biggest budget I've ever worked with. Breaking that budget down, that was a tedious process. And instead of me talking through, because I can't remember the budget off the top of my head, we're just going to show you the breakdown of this budget. What I spent the most money on was probably my DP, because I had to have Jensen, who works at Hatchee. Having Jensen on board was probably the most important aspect of getting this film done properly, in my eyes.
What's up? I'm Jensen. I'm the DP for Ladder to the Sky for Drake White, and we're going to talk some specs and just like technical breakdowns of how we pulled it off. So the camera we used, we ended up going with the FX6 as our main A camera, and we had two FX3s as our B and C cameras. And really the reason for this is, well, one, budget. Just because we had, I think it was 18 days like total of filming, and renting anything bigger than that or higher end than that would have honestly just blown our budget up, to be honest. And one of the other reasons we did was, honestly, so many cameras these days have such capable sensors that we felt really good about using an FX6 and an FX3. Really, just the Sony startup time was just so important to us, just running a documentary, especially during like the honey break scenes and stuff like that, just because if a deer came up and Drake's like, hey, I'm about to shoot this, I don't want to be like, hey, give us like a minute and then you can shoot the deer, because honestly stuff was just happening pretty quick. So yeah, I mean, we went with the FX6, FX3, and the DZO RL's lenses. I love those. We originally thought we were going to go with Tokina Vista Primes, just something that really didn't have too much character, because we're letting the grade have a lot more character than honestly just the lenses themselves. But the DZO RLs were more affordable. I actually bought them, rented them to the production. Yeah, we use those because I think they have a super nice look, great highlight roll off, great contrast, and yeah, they're just great lenses. The look we were kind of going for is kind of that wide, like Tree of Life, Revenant style look that Terrence Malick and Emmanuel Lubezki use. I think I pronounced probably Lubezki's name wrong, but anyways, it's that Tree of Life, like super up close, very like human, like very wide, very organic, lots of handheld. We locked off a little bit, but really there's a lot of handheld movement, stuff like that. But yeah, it was a lot of up close shooting on the 14mm and then DZO RL set, especially like the tree stand scenes. Like, this one of our like favorite shots was where he actually killed the buck, and it was like I was outside the tree stand, leaned back like this with an FX6 and a transmission on it and everything, and it was honestly just funny. But it really gave us a cool look, like being so up close with him, feeling like super close with him, but also getting a really cool perspective. Most of our interviews, we really went for a very much so leaning to the doc style, like very minimal hair lights, like probably about a 4:1 contrast ratio on about everything. But yeah, we really just had big keys, soft light, either a book light or I think we had a 6-foot just softbox, and on a 1200 or a 600C or something like that. And we use some panel lights for hair lights or kickers. But yeah, it's all pretty easy and simple setup. So it's really kind of how we want to lean into, because we needed to do so much in such a short period of time. One of our most stylized scenes was definitely the Black Abyss. Holt and Drake were talking, and they wanted to do something kind of similar to the Stranger Things like look of like the black void abyss, really just to represent like Drake's like what's going on in his head about like doubt and insecurity and fear. And really, I was on Frameset, which is where I look. It's not sponsored by Frameset. I look for all my inspo on Frameset. Love Frameset so much. But I saw this picture of it was a spotlight on this like sand and this guy in the middle. I think it was a music video, but it was like this little, it's just inspo, and I was like, what if, honestly, for practicality, not having like the floor like water like in Stranger Things, or the amount of area we need, I was like, what if we did a spotlight? So we ended up showed it to Holt. He loved it. We and Drake loved it too. And then we went forward with it. So pretty much what it was 30 feet of truss on crank stands with a 1200D with a spotlight on it. And we just reenacted scenes and match cut them. And it was really cool. It was probably one of my favorite things we got to pull off. And we used a Prism Lens Effects ghost filter, also, which was really cool for a lot of the like trippy, like almost distortion, like in-camera distortion we did.
All right, so we are setting up for our first interview for the Drake White film, Ladder to the Sky. We're interviewing Drew Keith. He's the CEO. He's gonna be touching on one of the hunts that he did with Drake 4 years ago. We're gonna talk about conservation and talking about why hunting's so important. Should be a great interview. We're excited to get things rolling finally.
So the setup we're using is FX6 A camera, FX3 B camera. We're running a 50 and a 25. Mainly 50 and 25 is pretty much gonna be the standard across all of our less like intimate, like less serious setups. We're running 50 and 100 on more like intimate stuff, but Drew's like pretty funny guy. The scenes we have written for him are like less serious, so we decided to go with like a 25, frame up like this like kind of like quintessential like honey break like spot pretty much. So we have 4x floppy right here, and then we're running a 300X in there just to give some kind of detail on the wide shot. So, or just some kind of interest on that wide shot. Later on, there are some practicals back there, like on the portion stuff, but it's not dark enough yet. So we'll see what happens. So we are at Drake White's interview. Pretty much this is one of the biggest interviews at Honey Break because it's Drake. So what we've got is we kind of like this like bookcase. It was pretty much already like set designed, so it looked really nice. That's pretty much a fake window. That one over there isn't playing at all, but put a 300X outside there with a plant in front of it to give it a little bit of texture. Running a tube light above, just a little hair light, and got an 8x right here, just kind of gold posted with a 600D going through it. Just some negative fill, and running a 25 and 50, and then just, again, pretty much just the DD system.
This is the prettiest backdrop we could find in the lodge. So we're like, okay, when you look at this, this looks like we're in a lodge. And we wanted Drake's to be in a more controlled environment inside. So this kind of a practical choice, but this is gonna be the longest interview, so we wanted to have the most practical setup here, so.
My favorite shot of the film was definitely the hero shot of Drake when he kills the buck. I mean, that was just unbeatable. The sun was in the perfect spot. We're up close on the 14. Like, Drake is just so excited, and it's just so cool. I mean, I have chills like thinking about it. My favorite lit shot of the film that we actually lit is actually the most simple lighting setup ever. It's literally just our gaffer Paul put a bulb and just one lamp in the bedroom, and it was actually about dusk outside, so it was already kind of a little bit of blue cast outside. So yeah, I mean, it's so simple, but it's Alex just sitting there at like looking at Hawk, and Drake is playing guitar, the bedtime guitar scene. I think it just got added in the end of the film, but randomly that was one of my favorite shots. It was so simple and so beautiful. I'm a huge fan of lighting things with just lamps when possible too. It was just so pretty. So my favorite interview setup, funny enough, is also a shot of Alex. And it was really cool. I loved it. Was in the like kitchen, and so we had like a gold like little bit of hair light. I think it was like 3200 that was emulating the lamp back in their room, and then we had some panels outside kicking in some light on that back wall, and then had a 600C, which is a big octabox on it. Really cool setup. It was really pretty. Just the colors in it were so nice. So I actually am also the colorist on the film. I think it's really cool, whether I'm collaborating with a colorist or doing color myself, because I do post color work. I think it's really important for the DP to oversee image from start to finish, just because you know where it's supposed to land at the end of the day. This is definitely probably the longest spanning and the biggest project I got to do, and it was really fun because I don't know, it was fun to do it with my friends. Like Holt and I have been friends for a while, and honestly, he helped me when I first started DPing and like helped me get on my feet doing that. And it was cool to be able to work on such a like in-depth and long project with one of your good friends, and also getting to do it with a lot of other skilled crew and friends around it. It felt like a big like I don't know, a big hangout of all my talented friends. That was really fun. And I think the end product goes to show how much people cared about it.
So I'm not sure if this is normal or not for a doc, but I actually wrote a script for this. I had all the scenes planned out beforehand, or how I was going to structure the entire story, which took me a while. The script may change, the structure may change as you're filming it, but I actually, when I went back and looked at the script and I was starting to edit, because I was the actual editor for this as well, I followed the script almost to a T. Now there are a few things here and there that changed, but I knew after I wrote the script and I pitched it to Drake and Zach, and I signed off on it, that they were confident with my vision, and it just helped us have a clear mind on shoot day on exactly what we wanted to shoot. Even if it's a doc, you need to script it out. The script may change, and it's not going to be verbatim, obviously, but you'll have the questions within that script that are going to prompt the answers that you want. If I didn't have that script beforehand, it would have been nearly impossible, or it would have been a really daunting task to go back and try to edit something like that. Most of y'all probably know how to edit. There wasn't any fancy cuts or anything like that. Like, we had some match cuts here and there that we planned out. We had certain things that we knew we wanted. We had songs from Drake that we knew we wanted to add in there. This is an 18-day shoot, roughly, give or take a few days. So we had to have a skeleton crew for most of it. So me and Jensen had to play or wear a lot of hats. As a director on a small shoot like this, you got to be able to gaff. You got to be able to help out with audio. You got to be, sometimes you even have to hold a camera and do certain things. But also you have to make sure your vision, because at the end of the day, it's your vision along with the subject. So in this case, it was Drake. So if you're doing a bunch of other things while the interviews are going on, you got to be careful with that. And I've gotten myself in trouble doing that because I'm also kind of a DP myself. Like, I want to touch the cameras. I want to make sure everything's working good. No, you need to have someone like Jensen and maybe another person on set that can handle all that, so you can just focus on story, because story is the king. That's the most important. If you're not getting the responses you want, then what are you doing as a director? So a director on a shoot like this, it's not like a narrative film where you're working with talent per se. Now, we did do some scenes that required Drake to do some acting, and I had a vision for those scenes, and I was able to communicate with Drake and with Jensen on how I wanted to execute those scenes. But mainly these were interviews that we had to get, and I was just there to make sure I was getting the responses that I wanted. The look was how I wanted it. In a doc like this, it's going to help to have a lot of footage, like a lot of footage, because you're going to have a lot of interviews, and you want to have footage that supplements those interviews. It helped out a lot that Drake was a country music artist who has a creative director that films a lot of his life. So we knew that we were going to have a big library of footage to tap in from, but we also knew that we wanted to set up some scenes to recreate certain things that happened within his life. One being, we recreated the stroke, we recreated his hunt. We wanted to create a Black Abyss scene that was a little more stylized. Yeah, there's certain things that we knew we wanted to produce and actually like put a different element to this documentary, but we also knew that we had a lot of good footage and photos to work with. Have that in mind when we're doing a doc. Like, what do you want to go capture as opposed to what do you already have in your library, and when you're going to use each one of those pieces of footage. For, in my case, I had it already scripted out to where I knew, like, oh, I'm going to have old videos and photos here, but here I know I need to have some footage that we're going to capture. Say, I knew Drake was going to talk about his family, so I wanted to get a bunch of footage of his family. On the last shoot day, the martini shot, as they call it, it feels like you're done. And for a lot of people, you are done. But in my case, since I'm editing this, I was not done. I was barely even started. I knew this editing was going to take, at least for me, I'm a good editor, but I don't edit all the time. My brother and Jensen edit a lot of our projects. So I knew this was going to take a decent chunk of time for me. So I allotted almost a full month just to edit this. I knew Drake's vision the best. And unless you film this and you know the story front to back and you wrote the script, this would be something extremely hard to edit if you just handed this off to somebody. So the biggest theme going into this edit that I knew I wanted to convey to the viewer was contrast. Not only was contrast in color, I mean, obviously you want to have a good contrast in all the shots you have, but contrast and pacing. So I knew I wanted to open up really, really fast, have a lot of fast, quick cuts, and I wanted to slow it down, then jump back into fast cuts and really chaotic scenes, and then I'd slow it down again. So like ebb and flow, keep the viewer really gripped. Not only in the pacing, but in the emotion as well. Like a lot of happy, like uplifting scenes, and then I wanted to have a lot of contemplative, darker scenes as well. So having that contrast in color, pacing, emotion, I think that's just an extremely important aspect to film, especially if you want to keep a viewer engaged the whole time. The honey break part of the film, we knew we wanted to capture a kill. We had been there for 5 days straight, hadn't seen one buck that was worth shooting. And honey break has a lot of big deer. The time was ticking. We didn't have, this is our last hunt. So it was me, Jensen, and Drake in the tree. And if we didn't get this shot, like we were gonna have to spend a lot of our budget going back to somewhere to go hunt. And it was about 10 minutes till shooting light was over. And finally, this big buck walks out. That was a cool little story or anecdote of, you hear them all in almost every film that's been created, but like that was a make it or break it point, and God was looking out for us. After editing for a month, you're shot and you're ready to just see it on the big screen. And our plan for this, like I'm not into the distribution. I kind of know what the idea of this distribution is. This is gonna live on Drake White's YouTube. We knew we wanted to have it for the public, but then it's also gonna live on the Outdoor channel for a while, and then hopefully a streaming platform will pick it up. That's the hope. We wanted this to be a story not only for hunters but for everybody. So that's the goal of this piece. That was always the goal of this piece, and hopefully that's what happens. So yeah, this was by far the most rewarding, fun, inspiring film I've ever done. Hopefully this will lead into something bigger. So yeah, that's how we shot Ladder to the Sky, a Drake White story.